So today we're going to look at the anatomy of power in North Korea. But let's try a different angle. Instead of just seeing its leader as a ruler, let's think of him as an architect, someone who has meticulously designed an entire nation for one single purpose: absolute, total control. Let's dive into the blueprint.
I mean, it's a huge question, isn't it? It's not just about grabbing power. It's about building a system, a structure that can sustain that power against everything. Threats from the inside, threats from the outside. So how do you actually build a state that's designed for nothing but control and survival?
Well, according to our source material, this whole massive structure really just rests on three enormous pillars. First, you have the foundation, which is all about inherited authority. Second, you need the brutal, sharp tools to enforce the design. And third, you have that final, untouchable element that projects power across the entire world. We're going to break down every single one.
You know, every great, or in this case, formidable, structure has to start with its foundation. Right? Before you can build up, you have to make sure the ground underneath you is solid. And for North Korea, that ground is the unchallenged absolute right of one family to rule. So this is absolutely crucial. This isn't just about a son taking over from his father. Hereditary rule consolidation, that's an active, relentless process. It means you're eliminating rivals, you're creating a whole mythology around the ruling family, and you're embedding their legitimacy so deep into the state that even questioning it becomes completely unthinkable. It is the literal bedrock of the whole regime. Okay, so with the foundation set, let's move up to the blueprint itself. Now, the architect needs a detailed plan for the structure, a design for how every single part will be managed, controlled, and kept in line. This is where the methods of enforcement come into play.
Now here's where things get really different. A traditional dictatorship, relies on the usual stuff: military might, social suppression. But North Korea has evolved into something else entirely, what our sources are calling a nuclear dictatorship. And this isn't just a new weapon in the toy box. It fundamentally changes the architecture of power. It's the ultimate insurance policy. It insulates the regime from almost any outside pressure and gives its leader this untouchable status on the world stage.
But what about threats from within? A fortress has to be secure from the inside out. So while that nuclear arsenal is dealing with external dangers, the architect's blueprint requires a much sharper, a much more visceral tool to enforce loyalty and to seal any cracks in that foundation of control. And that tool is fear. Plain and simple, applied with surgical brutality. Executions, both public and private, they aren't just punishments here. They are a core mechanism of how the government works. Think of it as a kind of political theater, designed to send a crystal clear, terrifying, and totally unambiguous message to everyone. Dissent will be erased. Loyalty is absolute. The architect's control is total. It's the iron fist from the blueprint, made terrifyingly real.
And that brings us to the final, and maybe the most imposing part of this entire structure. If hereditary rules the foundation and fears the blueprint, then the nuclear program, well, that's the spire. It's the crowning achievement of this entire architectural vision.
And to really understand the sheer scale of this final masterpiece, we don't have to sift through complex policy papers. The architect himself has laid out his ultimate vision in one single defining statement, a declaration that leaves absolutely no room for doubt about the nation's permanent priority. And here it is. We will strengthen our nuclear force without limit. Just think about the weight of those words. This isn't some political promise that can be debated or changed down the line. It's presented as an absolute truth, a foundational law for the nation itself. So what does without limit actually mean in this context? It means their nuclear force is completely non-negotiable. It's not a bargaining chip to be traded for aid or recognition. It is the regime's single highest priority, the ultimate guarantor that they will exist permanently. It's been elevated to become the nation's entire identity. So, when you put it all together, the foundation of family rule, the blueprint of internal fear, and the nuclear masterpiece that shields it from the rest of the world, the final structure becomes crystal clear. The architect hasn't just built a country, he has constructed a fortress. And that leaves us with one final, unavoidable question. When a nation's identity, its security, and its entire reason for being are so deeply tangled up with its military power, what does that mean for its people, for the region, and for the world?
What is the future of a nation that's been built as a weapon?